myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you.
Good evening to Ready Steady Cook with me, Steve Wraith, where tonight I brought a banana, an apple and a pear, and I'm just going to ask Liam, what can you make with them, mate?
Fruit salad.
Bang goes the attempt at not speaking about football in Newcastle United. Of course, this is NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and as always on a Tuesday night, it is Liam Kennedy, and God, we always say in the description box, it's a chance to look back at the last 7 days at Newcastle United. It's an absolute car crash at the minute, like it really is, and I think we should start with football, because that's what, we like to talk about, and the bad news, which of course has come out, which is tinged with a bit of good news, I suppose, that, the Almiron and the ASM injuries, although it keeps them out of some crucial games over the next few weeks, don't appear to be as bad as we first thought on Saturday, mate.
No, they don't. I mean, I think part of you still kind of hopes that they're not going to be bad at all, and we're going to see, at least, I was hoping in the back of my mind, we'd maybe see one of them at least at the weekend, but obviously they were bad injuries. Miguel Almiron's already been on Instagram. He's talking about potentially being available for his international team, talking about the end of the month for the international break. Now, if that's the case, then it really does look like Almiron isn't quite as bad as everybody thought. Suggestions he's already out there, according to team doctors over in Paraguay, that he's already running on treadmills and that kind of thing. And look, it may be the case that he isn't out for the full time that is suggested.
Good.
A calf issue with St. Maximin, another muscle problem. So unfortunately for him, it's probably going to be have to really take the time as they are with Callum Wilson. And I think realistically, if we're going to look at it, we're going to have to see the next 3 games out probably. Maybe Almiron might has got half a chance of coming back before then, but the next 3 probably we'll have to rule them out and just say, look, we'll go with what we've got. It's going to be tough. They've represented a large portion of the goals that Newcastle United have scored this season, a lot of the threat. Almiron's been absolutely incredible for me since this turnaround in formation. He's been such a crucial part of the way Newcastle United play, and obviously Callum Wilson was until the injury, but St. Maximin as well. I think everyone's got to remember that people are maybe overlooking the fact that he'll be out as well. You've got to remember that the large amount of that real winless run that Newcastle went on, whatever it ended up being, was 11 games or so. St. Maximin was missing for most of those games, and it coincided with his absence. So you've got to think that it's really problematic that all 3 of them, for different reasons, are out. But fingers crossed on Almiron. I mean, everyone got the news that they wanted today. Emil Kraft back in training at the end of the week. I think everyone was jumping for joy with that one. So, yeah, I think it was the one of the 3 that everybody was sort of really hoping was going to be fit for West Brom. But, yeah, again, it looks like he's going to be okay, I would think. Got Javier Manquillo on the comeback trail. Got Federico Fernandez on the comeback trail. I think it's an interesting debate whether we've called for an identity at Newcastle United since Steve Bruce came in. And Newcastle United haven't had one. Not in the way they play, the style. They've actually got one now. They've got a formation that they stick to, a system, a way of playing. They're reasonably attack-minded. They press high. Is it a case that you stick with that identity that they've newly formed, or do you throw it out the window? Because realistically, the 3 attacking players who really suit that identity and that way of playing aren't there. I mean, who comes in? I've done a little bit of an analysis piece today. I don't know if anybody else has seen it out there. Come on here, give us your thoughts. But there's lots of different ways you can go. One left field option is Elliot Anderson. He's going to be available for the weekend, and they have been talking him up. I do think he'll probably play a part between now and the end of the season, and I do think he is the only real natural number 10 that is in that squad at the moment. But is it too early for a young lad to come in? He looks ready, and we might never know if he's ready until he actually has a go. But I would suspect that Steve Bruce is probably going to have Ryan Fraser playing that central role. Joe Linton will play out on the left. And then realistically, it's going to be a straight choice for me to say, do you bring Dwight Gale in and try the Chelsea formation and just almost allow him to just drill it into him a bit more, the role he's got to do, because he looked a fish out of water in that Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge. Didn't really know whether he was coming or going, what runs he was meant to make. I mean, Chelsea were a good side, so it's maybe a bit unfair, and the lad had not played a lot of football this season. It's either going to be Dwight Gale or Jacob Murphy. Jacob Murphy's he's okay. He's an okay player, but he's a strange kind of player because the chance that he created for Joe Linton is almost a chance only he could create. It was a stumbling run that he manages just to get past people, but he's got that little bit of quality as well. He can deliver from the right hand side. So for me, it's probably a straight swap. I would say Dwight Gale probably fits into that. I would always try and find a place for Dwight Gale personally, and the reason being is that I think he's the only one with natural goals in his game. I think Andy Carroll probably doesn't even come into the conversation. It's impossible to know, but he just doesn't fit the system, and he'll have to remain a plan B or plan C off the bench. But yeah, I think they're going to have to go with what they've got at the moment. It's going to be a struggle, but we've just got to hope they can, by hook or by crook, just get enough points to keep their heads above water. Because obviously everybody out there is talking about the implications of a relegation. The very, very basic roll in the back implications of a relegation to me are Newcastle United drop back into the wilderness, and that's not where we want to be.
No, definitely not. You did say they've got a game plan. I think that's what it is. I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. That's what it feels. That's what it feels like under Steve Bruce at the minute. I've got to be perfectly honest. I like this question. It's a bit different. Peter Robson says, "Good evening, gents. Question about Liam. I know obviously you can't divulge most of your sources, but who generally makes the first approach regarding stories? Is it you or the sources?" I mean, that's a journalistic question.
It's normally the journalist who goes digging. To be honest, it's not. I mean, you can get some things given to you on a plate. You'll often get tip-offs about certain things, then go to certain sources and find things out. But yeah, it's a really good question. I would usually say it's the reporter who digs for the information, and then we'll check it out with sources. But you do sometimes get tips here and there that lead you down the right path. Not often you'll get a full lock, stock, and barrel story presented at your doorstep, but it can happen as well. So, but no, I would say it's mostly the journalists who do that bit digging, ask the right questions, and normally most of the time get the right answers.
Yeah, I mean, what did you make of the game of the weekend? I've asked this question to everybody who's been on the show since then. Do you think it was a point earned, or do you think it was 2 points dropped? 2
points dropped. I think Wolves were there for the taking. I think they were really, really poor. I think without that substitution, where they're ultimately trying to change far too much in a team at one point, and the information just hasn't got across there. I put a photo out that I picked up from Getty, and people might have seen it out there on my Twitter feed. Have a little scroll if you didn't, and it's the information being passed from Graham Jones to Matt Ritchie with Steve Bruce standing on at the touchline, and that necessarily wasn't a dig at Steve Bruce. What it was actually a little bit of a pointer towards what he might have been really saying. Was he really digging Matt Ritchie out, or was he also digging Graham Jones out for not giving that information properly? I'm led to believe that Stephen Clements might have had a conversation with him as well, in and around that time, not shown by the pictures, of course. But I sort of think that he was digging out his coaches as well as the player in those sort of post-match complaints. The game itself, look, I thought it was there for the take, and I thought it was a game Newcastle United should have won. Wolves, apart from Adama Traore, didn't really have much of a threat. Didn't really have many periods in the game either. And I think you look at the end of the game, Joe Linton's got to score that chance. I think most strikers score that chance. He's hit it well enough, and he looks a bit more confident. He's striking the ball. I think he had 3 or 4 shots in the game, but he's got to stick that chance away. I don't care how well you hit it. You've just got to scuff it in. It's got to go into there somehow, and Newcastle win that game. But yeah, it was disappointing, and given the situation, it would have been so much. So there would have been so much more positivity around the place had Newcastle United just had that extra 2 points on the board rather than the 1.
Yeah, Tom Lynch, Luke Edwards hasn't said the takeover's off. He said talks are halted until relegation is known. You wouldn't pay a Premier League price for a Championship club. Tom, I think that's probably the most sensible thing I've heard all day. Twitter's been poisonous today, Liam. We're going to have to touch on it because everybody knows that we have been involved in, just replying to people. We haven't been involved in the toxicity that seems to have appeared once again today. Luke said nothing new. Genuinely put something out there. As always on Twitter, you're going to get people who are going to agree with you, people who are going to be nonplussed, people who are going to attack you. Luke's had a bit of all of that today. But nothing new really, and got to admit, Tom is pretty much on the money there when he says you won't pay a Premier League price for a Championship club. And my mindset is, as everybody knows, I came out with it last night, I came out with it on, I've come out with it countless times now, but I still believe the takeover is possible and will go ahead. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who don't believe that. And, it's, somebody's going to be right. But, until we hear from PCP and until we hear from the club, then they say that it is completely off and we've just got to move forward, then there's always a bit of hope. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a bit of hope.
What I would add to that, Steve, is my information is that nothing's really changed. There hasn't really been a massive amount of things that have changed to sort of warrant all of this talk today, and that's me being brutally honest. Look, things are still where they are. Arbitration is rumbling on very, very slow, at a very, very slow pace. Nowhere near as quick as anybody, including the buyer and seller, would like it to. But is the deal off? I don't think Luke said the deal was off. I think it was pretty. Was it Tom there did sum that up quite cleverly that you wouldn't pay that money, and that's going to be the big thing. That to me, I put a piece out on Twitter today suggest that. I think, there's some people who agree and disagree. And look, let's go on to Luke himself, and he's a fantastic journalist. Somebody I've talked on here before about respecting. I used to read him when he was in the Journal, really like a real stalwart of the Northeast journalistic scene, and fantastic writer, fantastic reporter, and he's got his information. And people don't always agree. And Twitter would be a boring place if everybody agreed, because, it's a lot about sort of having arguments and tit for tats and people going. And Luke's really good at that. Luke's really good at having conversations with people and talking to people. And I think that's something that, like I say, he does really well. A lot of people do that. And I try to do that as well. And I think with Luke's story today, I think maybe the tweet that he put out beforehand wasn't quite reflective of the story. I read the story myself, and he sort of suggested that the deal was kind of the club wasn't up for sale anymore. Well, the only bit of point that of the nuance in that bit that I would say is that Newcastle United hasn't really been up for sale since the start of last year, or in and around the first throes of 2020. It hasn't been up for sale because Newcastle United effectively got sold to the point of ratification. And that deal is still there, and they're fighting for that deal. So anybody else, which is mentioned in the story, who might be looking to come in on that, hasn't got a chance until this deal is dead. Now, is that, Luke was talking about that kind of thing of people in and around, is that a suggestion that the club maybe are opening the door to other people? That's not my information, but I don't know if that's definitely the case or not. All I know is that as of very, very recently, things are very live. Things are moving in terms of the arbitration. Snail's pace, not the pace that anybody wanted them to go. But it is still live. People are still there. The buyer still wants to buy the football club. Mike Ashley still wants to sell the football club. But it is important, and I think that's one thing that the piece almost stresses, is that it's important that this relegation is taken seriously by the hierarchy and the people of the club. And it was good in reading it that almost it's taken this long, but Mike Ashley and the people around him are now aware to the real and present danger that relegation presents to this football club. It always takes them too long. It's taken them too long this time. I've said before the point I thought that it went over the edge. It may be earlier for some people, it may be later for others. For me, it was the Aston Villa game. The Aston Villa game was the edge, and we went over it then because we had Sheffield United on the game previous, and in that game, Newcastle United were dreadful. It was probably one of the worst 90 minutes of football collectively I've ever seen. But there was the caveat that there was the red card. So that also, that did sort of, it gave an excuse almost for that performance in some ways. To then follow it up with Aston Villa was an absolute disgrace. And I've never been so wound up watching a game as that second half, because it was a piss take. It really was just a piss take. Aston Villa passed the ball around Newcastle as if they weren't there, and it was really, really embarrassing. And I thought, for me, that was the point. That was the bit where you don't return from, and they haven't really. It's taken a little boost from the likes of Graham Jones to sort of improve that, but we're still not there. We're still not getting enough points to really make a dent in our elite position. We're not getting away from that bottom three. We're edging closer and closer and closer, and it's important to note that Thursday night, Tottenham Hotspur Fulham. That we could well. I mean, it'll be a very good result for Fulham to knock us into the bottom three. But if they win due to their superior goal difference, we could find ourselves going into Sunday's game at lunchtime already in the bottom three. And I think that's when the pressure really ramps up. But the positives from Luke's piece today was that really it's almost like Mike Ashley and the hierarchy have awakened and woken up to think, well, actually, the whole thing could go up in smoke here if we don't start focusing our minds. They should have focused our minds from the very start. They should never have lost focus. But it's interesting to argue that have Mike Ashley's people ever had full focus on really what matters at Newcastle United? We have, fans have, journalists have. But I just don't think they've ever really grasped it. We've all been talking about this for a long time, that relegation was one of the real and present dangers on the horizon to any deal, but also the Premier League status. I don't want to be a Championship club. I want to watch Premier League football. I want Newcastle United to be in the top flight. Of course, you get some people say, "Oh, well, the football's rubbish, this, that, and the other. We can't compete." I don't care. I still want to be in the Premier League. I don't want to be in the Championship, and I think most people out there probably feel the same. So that's the real and present danger, is losing your Premier League status. And Mike Ashley could I think he's almost maybe come to the realisation that he could find himself in a position whereby he will not be able to sell this football club because he won't accept. I'd be shocked if this is where the deal comes into problematic areas. If you get relegated, that renegotiation, how does that go? Does Mike Ashley suddenly accept 150 million for the football club? I doubt it. Does he suddenly accept 200 million? Again, I doubt it. He's going to want Premier League money for a Championship club with no guarantees that they'll come back. And I think that's where a real deal becomes problematic, as well as the 80% shareholder in this deal. Let's remember why Saudi Arabia are doing this. They're doing it because they see value in being able to make money in Newcastle United, in turning a club that they buy for 300 million into one worth billions. That can be done. It's been done. It's been done Tottenham in recent times. It's been done Liverpool, Manchester City. All these clubs are valued in the billions, and it wouldn't take a massive amount of investment in infrastructure. It wouldn't take the money you spend to get that value. That's what PIF are all about: having value for money and making sort of having, it's basically like a pension pot for the country effectively for when the oil runs out. But also that they could buy an asset anywhere else around the world and try and make money off that and get a good return. They're not just buying Newcastle United for that, it has to be remembered. They're buying it because they're buying into the Premier League. Now, the Premier League is one of the most watched products on the planet. Countries all over the world. They're not just doing this to make money. They're doing this to wave the Saudi flags, and they want to walk through the front door, and they want effectively want Newcastle to be a showpiece part of their 2030 vision. That can't be overlooked. Would they really want to buy a team who's sitting 10th in the Championship? I don't think they would. That's just me applying my logic and my understanding to where we stand with this takeover. That's not being negative or positive, but it really does focus in on how much of a problem relegation will become. Now, I'm sitting saying that, and I can sit now. We've all sat and talked about this on this programme for weeks, months. How's people with skin in the game not been thinking this for so long? But it's the logic thing. The logic goes out the window with Mike Ashley's Newcastle United. You do the bare minimum to get the maximum out, and he just pushes things too close to the line. Some would argue now, even realising now we're in a problematic position, is too late. You change Steve Bruce tomorrow, which I don't think they will. I'm not suggesting they will. You change Steve Bruce tomorrow and bring a new manager in, a better manager, somebody more qualified, etc., and better skill set. They're still dealing with a really tough hand. They're still dealing with a hand without effectively three of your best four players. Because I count those three plus Martin Dubravka as the best four players in the Newcastle United squad. Three of your four out for at least the next 30% of your remaining games to stay in the division. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy hand to deal for anybody. It's probably too late already. That's why I would suggest we're probably stuck where we are with Steve Bruce. And if the time comes where Mike Ashley wields the axe, which always comes too late, we know that from experience, I think it's Graham Jones. I'm pretty sure it's Graham Jones who works in this job.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think we can say too much more, really. I mean, you've covered all the bases. I think we've answered all the questions. And if people tune in late, I'll just point them back to this point in the programme. But that's all we know. A lot of it is guesswork and conjecture on behalf of everybody. Everybody who is commenting on the takeover, as I've said before, is only relying on the information that they get. And ultimately, the only people who know are PCP and the club. And, eventually the truth will out, as I keep saying, week in, week out. And I hope that puts a few people's minds at rest. If I felt the takeover was off, I would say it was off, and I would be honest with everybody watching, and I would be honest on social media. But I genuinely think there is still life in this old takeover yet. So let's see what happens. Let's talk a little bit about football once I've said thank you to the sponsors. Spider VPN, of course, who've been with us all month of February, are sticking with us in March. So a big shout out to them. They sponsor the StreamYard application. Big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle. And also a big shout out to Jab Signature, the makers of our flyers and promotional material. Also check out Loaded Football tomorrow night, Wednesday, of course, 9 o'clock. Join Daz, Martin and Chris as they talk through football around the world. And there is their rather snazzy flyer for this week. They're joined by the Pacemakers. And usually on Wednesday we also have Retro Night. Well, we have got Retro Night tomorrow, but because of the passing of the late great Glenn Roeder, we are doing a special tribute show tomorrow night, covering Glenn's time as a player and as a manager at Newcastle United. So looking forward to welcoming the lads from the Retro team on to look back on their memories of Glenn Roeder. Plenty questions coming in, as always on a Tuesday. We'll never get through all of them. And because we've covered the takeover as best we can, I want to try and concentrate on some of the football questions. So Bede McElwee says, Liam, would you be tempted to put Willock behind whichever striker we choose at the weekend?
Before I answer Bede's question, I just wanted to stay on the retro theme.
Oh, yeah.
Got this through in the post. Everyone can see that. Which is a present from a viewer out there. It's from Dodo Bird. Yeah, it is from Dodo Bird. He sent a nice letter as well. I just want to say thank you very much for that really, really kind gift. It's an official club handbook and diary from 1983-84. And look, I've had a good look through. It's fantastic. Really like a trip down memory lane. A little bit before my time, but such a fantastic piece of Newcastle United history to be sent out. But yeah,
he actually made them, I think, and he sent me it, and it's gone alongside me rather battered and bruised one, which had my childlike scroll in, because of course that was my very first season as a Newcastle fan, so it was quite relevant to me. But big thank you for that, for mine as well, and Malcolm and Gibbo as well. I both got theirs, so thanks very much to Dodo Bird for that very kind gift. But
Willock. Question. Joe Willock. I think Joe Willock's got the energy. I think he can play in that position. But what I would say is that does he replace an Almiron, because Almiron was advanced? Like, I think a lot of people are taking it as a diamond formation. I never ever saw it as a diamond. I always more saw it as Almiron was the central of the three attacking players. And I think Almiron's got that to be able to play both, drop in, go behind. I'm not quite sure Willock's got that. I do think he could play a more advanced role, but I would suggest that he was brought in to bring legs to that midfield. I would be reluctant to take him out of the midfield, especially when you've got attacking options further up. I do think he could potentially play there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Next question is on the screen, and that's from John Askew. He says, evening everyone. Liam, do you agree with me that even with the injuries, there's a half-decent team in our squad, but Bruce won't pick it? Obviously referring probably to the likes of Longstaffs and that.
Yeah, even in John, I think there is a half decent team there. I think there's enough players in Newcastle United squad to get them out of this mess that they find themselves in. But it isn't as strong as it would have been. And Newcastle United really struggle to get results even with their strongest players on the pitch. So that's got to be the concern. But I do think there is enough quality there. Look, I'm not going to suggest that Jacob Murphy's necessarily a Premier League player. I think he's got something about him, but he may be a division below. Joe Linton is problematic. Got to be honest, Joe Linton's problematic. Apart from being a big lump of a guy, there isn't really much that he adds to the football team. And I'm not saying he isn't putting effort in, because he is. It's not a case of criticising him for that, but apart from being a big lump of a guy, I don't really see any positives to having him inside. But we are where we are, and we have to pick him. Dwight Gale has got goals in him, but he's a lower Premier League centre forward. I don't think he would score enough goals to take you any higher than that, as we've proven. He's been almost replaced for the last sort of 5 years of his time at Newcastle United, since promotion effectively. And beyond that, I think Newcastle, I do think Ryan Fraser's got something. I think Ryan Fraser's got a fantastic delivery, if not better than Miguel Almiron at times. But is he quite that metronomic, energetic player to drop in that 10 role? Maybe not. I've mentioned before, I think Sean Longstaff, for me, can get in this side. I think Sean Longstaff should be playing ahead of John Joe Shelvey, because I think he brings in, although Shelvey had a better game against Wolves, I do think that Longstaff brings a whole lot more to the game. Never hides, never shirks, always wants the ball, might not always do as much with it, but always wants the ball. And I think in this team where there's a lot of onus on the attacking player, and I think you need that energy in midfield. I just don't think that John Joe Shelvey brings it. So Matty Longstaff's another that it's inexplicable why he's not involved at all. I think there's definitely a place for him in the side, if not on the bench. And Elliot Anderson's somebody who can come in and make a difference. But do I think there's a really good side there? No, I don't. I think without those three players, I think that's arguably three of the four best players in the Newcastle United squad who are now sitting on the treatment table for at least the next probably 3 weeks, which is a big concern. It's a big concern.
Colin Wilson's talking about the fact that it's a big thing. It even debated by Jamie Carragher with Mark Hughes on Sky Sports. The whole throwing Richie under the bus by didn't pass the instructions on. Did you watch the Carragher explanation? I retweeted it today. Well. Yeah. I mean, Colin says, when I listen to the games on TV, I can hear everything. Why can Steve Bruce not shout on his instructions from the sidelines instead of having to rely on third parties, allegedly?
There's enough of them there. There's enough of them there. There's about 5 of them standing on the touchline. They could have been screaming at Jacob Murphy well before. I mean, they rolled that on in that Carragher analysis, which was excellent, by the way.
It was, and I agreed with exactly what he said.
Yeah, they rolled it through. And what we're talking about 2 phases of play where they could have really dragged him over there. They could have been screaming. They could have been screaming at other players to tell him to come over, but they didn't. And that should have been sorted straight away. It should have been sorted the minute that he come on. Somebody should have been screaming for Jacob Murphy to come over rather than just relying upon Matt Ritchie to sort of take over that instruction. It wasn't the case if you were just changing one position. You were actually taking a boy out from the left-hand side to bring him right back. You're switching a centre midfielder to drop him in. It was a lot of changes to be making in one go. So I don't actually blame Richie too much, although it doesn't look like he made a massive effort to start explaining when you watch that Carragher stuff. He almost trots on and has a little conversation with Hayden, and Hayden sort of half drops into that right back role and didn't know whether he was coming or going when that cross came in. There was just a lot of confusion, but I think that's kind of what underlines Newcastle United at the moment. There is a lot of confusion. There's confusion on the touchline, and there's confusion on the pitch as well. Horrendous seeing somebody like the skipper Jamal Lascelles having to say, "Well, I don't really know what the hell happened." I think that was really concerning, that interview after, and I think we all know why. And like I say, anybody who hasn't watched that Carragher analysis needs to take a look at it, because there is a lot of people culpable in that sequence. The one who isn't culpable is Jacob Murphy, because he just never gets the message that he's meant to now be the right wing back.
Yeah, it was a strange situation, and of course one which led to the equalising goal. Very disappointing. Liam Hall says, "Good evening, everyone. Question for Steve and Liam: will Newcastle stay up? What do you think, Liam?"
Thanks for the question, Liam. Yeah, I think they will. Yeah, I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be really tight. I was kind of hoping that the next 6 games Newcastle would probably pick up enough points to have stretched themselves away to an extent, because there's then a run of games that Fulham have that are really, they've got a tough run now. Then when we go into our tough run of 4 before the final 2, where we've got the likes of Man City, Arsenal, Leicester, Liverpool, I was expecting would hope to have enough points on the board to maybe only have to get a result in one of those last 2. Without having my top players, we're probably going to be going into those final 2 games. I would expect having to at least pick up 4 points, probably 6, to make sure that we stay safe. Because I find it really difficult to see how we're going to get points between now and when the players come back. And we've got to remember, even when we come back, you're not planting a fully fit Callum Wilson, fully fit Alan St Maximin, and fully fit Miguel Almiron straight back into the side. It may take those lads a game or 2 to get back up to fitness, and then by the time we get into that, we're into our run. That run of 4 games where the most seasons are a write-off because of the level. And even before that, we've got a high-flying West Ham at the end of the 6 games. But it's a home game, and it's a game that traditionally you would look at and say, look, we've got to get something out of that. They're always decent games at home and away against West Ham, and we'll win our fair share of them. Same with Tottenham, maybe it's not in recent years, but we'll get our fair share of wins home and away against Tottenham as well. And those are two of the games in that 6 that you look at and say, well, maybe we've got to get points in. We've just got to hope that at least one or two of those key players are back by the time those games come around, and then at least we've got half a chance of picking up the odd point out of games that we didn't expect.
Yeah, James Dean says Elliot Anderson didn't play for the under-23s yesterday. Do you think he'll make a surprise appearance on Sunday, Liam?
Yeah, I think he'll be involved on Sunday. I'm not saying he'll be in from the start, but I think he'll at least be on the bench.
Okay, if you're a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. How do you do that? Well, you click the little icon down in the bottom right-hand corner, and that helps you subscribe to the channel. On top of that, if you click the little thumb underneath and gives you the opportunity of liking the video, it does help us. It helps us grow the community, grow the channel, and build things up. So please do it. We had over 1,000 new subscribers this week, which has been absolutely fantastic. And just want to thank everybody for joining us. But once again, just click that little button down in the right hand side, hit the like button underneath, and click share. That shares it to your social media. Back to the questions. This one again caused a little bit of controversy. I personally felt it was it was over nothing really. Danny Benharper says, Liam, what's your thoughts on the spat between Bruce and Gray shown live? Anything in it? I would have said nothing was in it. I would have said it was typical coaches talking to each other and expressing an opinion about somebody who maybe wasn't ready, you know. I mean, I think, you know, maybe that was as simple as that, but I don't think they fell out on the touchline. What do you think?
I think there's a lot to be said about doing this. I think they could have covered their faces and had that conversation, then there wouldn't be this complaint. But look, I don't think there's anything in it. I'm with you, Steve. I think it was a look. We need to get the lip readers out. If anybody's a lip reader out there and had a go to let me know what you think you're saying. But my immediate take, my gut feeling when I watched it was, obviously I do think he's sort of saying an expletive towards him and pointing it towards Jones. But the fact that Bruce continues to talk suggests to me that he's not totally shooting down what Graham Jones is saying. It'd be quite unusual to say, get away, man, and then suddenly continue talking. If you would normally just say it and then that would be the end of it. So no, I didn't think necessarily. It wasn't a great look. Never is a good look, but I think we are reading a lot into every little thing at the moment. And I put that out there this week saying, what do you think about it? And I think there was a mixed reaction. I think a lot of people jumped on it, but other people could see it for what it is. And I think it probably was just frustration between two coaches. I don't think there was anything particularly pointed or towards each other or any issues there. But what I would say is I don't think the garden's rosy on the touchline. I said that before. There's a lot of confused messages. There is tension. There is tension, but I don't think that was an example of it.
Paul Gray, he would like to see Sean Longstaff back in the number 10 role. He says when he was used there last season, albeit one game before injury, looked good. Plus, he gets shots in and hopefully get the odd goal. What's your thoughts about that?
I think the game you're referring to, Paul, was a Bournemouth game where he scored a goal, and then I think did he go off injured as well in that same one? I think he was fantastic that day, making really clever runs into the box. And Sean Longstaff's a player who can score goals. He's a player who knows where the back of the net is, can strike with both feet as well. I think he's got it. I think that's his position. Is he the Almiron replacement in this system in the position? Probably not. But he's definitely got ability as a 10 in front of the midfielders to drop in midfield and further forward. I don't think he's an Almiron who is essentially a forward who drops into midfield. I don't think it's that way around. So I don't think he's quite for this system. But where I would play Sean Longstaff is in John Joe Shelvey's position. I think Sean Longstaff will give you a lot more defensive cover than John Joe Shelvey does. And I think he'll also put more of a shift in because I think Shelvey's culpable. Every time you see go down the wing, he's culpable. He never quite covers in. There's always people running past him. He's always out of position. For me, it's not. I'm not really a fan of Shelvey. I think anybody who watches this program regularly will know that. So I would always have a Matty or a Sean. I think Sean fits that position much better than Matty does. But I think I would play either of them ahead of John Joe Shelvey. Okay.
You released something tonight on the Shields Gazette website, Liam, which I think the fans should probably have a look at. Tell us a little bit about that tonight.
So we did a big survey last week. We asked 15 questions. There might be some people out there who were involved in it. And I'm just slowly going through the results this week. Yesterday, we did a piece on confidence in Steve Bruce. Is he the man to take Newcastle United forward? How big of an impact do you think Graham Jones has had? Who takes the credit for recent performance upturns, etc.? tonight we did it takeover focused, but reacting to a lot of the mood that's out there. But it was also actually genuinely what I was going to put on tonight, just on what people's confidence is in this deal. Are people confident that this deal will go through? Do people believe that Mike Ashley will still be the owner of this football club by the end of the year? Are you sick of it? Do you still want this deal, or do you not want this deal? Are you sick of the talk? There's lots of little bits of results to question. And some of the results are quite interesting. We're going to go through the week. I've got another couple of pieces, and one of them is a message to any new owners, whether it be the potential buyers now or anybody that comes into the football club, what priorities they should have, and what the fans have said in that regard. Whether it's improving the playing squad or the training ground or better in the stadium, etc. And we've also got bits and bobs on the transfer window as well. Did Newcastle United make mistakes? Did they have a good window? Did they make a mistake with Florian De Jeune, not bringing a Wilson understudy in? Did they also make a mistake there? So we've got lots of questions. It was like a 15-question thing from last week. So anybody who wants to have a look at that, just check my Twitter timeline out at Liam J Kennedy 23, or at Mouth of the Time Pod. We're also on Twitter, so check those two out, or at Shields Gazette. You'll find it on there. But yeah, last week was the chance to take part. This week is just the results, and some of them might surprise you. Some of the results might surprise you, but I think some won't. Especially when the confidence in Steve Bruce, whether he's the man to take Newcastle United forward. I don't think that'll be much of a surprise on what people have voted. But the confidence and the takeover, are people confident in PCP producing a deal? People maybe aren't that confident now. I think there's been a little drain in confidence that people think, well, can they really get this over the line?
People are sick.
Yeah, they are. But there is also still, the stats tally that there is still a want for change. And there is not just a want for change from Ashley. There's also a want for change for this deal. And I think that's quite key as well. I think people
not from everybody. Not from everybody. Some people are very concerned about the fact that it's Saudi coming in, and all the horrendous stories that we hear about journalists being chopped up, etc. Fully understand it. There's two sides to every story. You know what I mean? I said last night, quite a passionate rant I gave last night about, I just want the football club taken over. And I want the best for our football club. But I fully understand the alternative view from people who say that. But I don't know enough about it. You know what I mean? And all I know is that we're trying to get a deal done with PIF from Saudi, who do a lot of business with with our country. Now we're hearing about this country cutting aid to Yemen. I didn't even know we were giving any aid to Yemen. Do you know what I mean? And people then ask me on Twitter, what do you think about that? Will it affect the takeover? I've got no idea. I've got no idea.
You need to read up, man.
I've got no idea what it means. I live a very sheltered life. My focus first and foremost is my family. Then it's me. Then it's getting my books written about criminals, which annoys some people, which helps pay the bills. And then the rest of it is organising 7 podcasts a week. So it's a very sheltered life. And other than that, I spend the rest of the time walking backwards and forwards because the bloody gym's shut. So that's it. That's my life. I make the odd cup of tea. I heat things up in the microwave. Other than that, I feed the cat. And I do go to the toilet as well. Other than that,
good insight, yes, Steve.
It's the life of Steve Wraith. I think I've spent so many years speaking to Charles Bronson, that aka Charles Salvador. And you can listen to those podcasts if you're that way inclined. That I just that's my life. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Do your exercise. Keep it simple.
No, it's quite commendable, to be honest. The amount of time that you do commit to this channel, like 7 podcasts a week. The amount of interviews.
Sometimes 9.
Yeah, quite incredible, to be honest. And I think some people, it might give an insight into the amount of time it takes as well. It's not something you just rock up and suddenly do. It takes a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, a lot of time to get to this point, to what you guys see here. It's easy for me. I just switch my light on, which everyone complained about at the start. I didn't have a light, so I've got one of them now. I just switch that on and put my laptop on, which I'm sitting with anyway. But for Steve, it's so much more than that. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of forward planning. You've got to know with this commitment to doing every day, you've got to know weeks in advance. Well, I'm going to do that then, and sort of get them calls in. And it must be quite a challenge.
It is, but it's an enjoyable one and people enjoy it out there. So as long as that is the case, we'll carry on doing it. Next one from John. Good question, John. Any update on player contracts? Several of the squad are out of contract in the summer. Are we going to have any money to replace them, no matter which league we're in?
No, I don't think we are. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I don't think there is going to be a lot of money spent in Newcastle United. There's been a lot of warning with regards sources saying about the financial impact that not having fans there, COVID, etc., sponsorship that's had on the football club. And I think they're warning because it's going to be tight. I think we're going to be hoovering up loans and frees. But I don't think that's just going to be Newcastle United. I think there'll be a lot of that wherever Newcastle United go in the Championship or whether in the Premier League. There'll be a lot of clubs in the same boat. But on contracts, the only really information I can give on contracts at the moment, which maybe it's out, if it's out there, I'm not sure, is Fabian Shaw. I think Fabian Shaw, they'll activate. There is a year's extension as part of his deal, which the club can activate, and I think they will activate that. Whether that means Fabian Shaw remain at the football club next season is up for debate. I'm not sure whether he will remain, but I think they will activate that deal. We're going to see Federico Fernandez contract come into the spotlight. Given his age and the money that he's on, I'm not 100% certain where that deal stands. I think Newcastle United would probably be reasonably wise to sort of assess that situation as we go, because handing out a hefty contract to somebody as a Championship club might be quite problematic. But he is a player for me. I would love to see him stay at the football club because he's the best natural defender that there is in the squad, and I'd love to see him back in this side as well. I think Jamal Lascelles, you forget the goal, I think he had a good game actually. I think he played pretty well.
Stats back it up, Liam. I showed this last night on Ladies' Night, but the stats back it up. There you go, from the minutes played 90, passes completed 39, recoveries 4, clearances 8, duels won 4, goals scored 1. Better from the captain. Yeah,
it was much better. I don't want to take his shine off it, but he wasn't playing against the most mobile and active of centre forwards in Willian Jose. I mean, he could have been playing for the next 3 weeks and probably wouldn't have got near scoring a goal. But credit to Lascelles, I thought he had a really good game, and I would like to see Federico Fernandez back in that side, because I just think he's a leader. He brings a confidence because of his ability, and he's the kind of player that you want in a relegation fight.
Yeah, loads of comments coming in, lots of suggestions for players. People, John Kennedy actually before said, how can Joe Linton start on Sunday? He offers nothing at all. He's been playing better, as I said, we've covered it on the show before, but that is the big decision to make at the weekend, isn't it? Who you go for up front. I would like to see Andy Carroll and Dwight Gale, and I know that'll surprise a lot of people that I would put Carroll in. But yeah, I think Andy Carroll, he gets it. He'll run around. He'll put effort in. When he's come on as a sub, he's not let us down. And I think you start with Carroll. And Gale. You've got to hope that Gale, puts his backside in gear. I'd love to see Richie in as well. And I think we'll get something. I think we could win the game by going for goal. Do you know what I mean? And I think Andy Carroll will cause them all kinds of problems. And if Gale can be the fox in the box, I still think we can get something. Ryan Fraser has to start. Richie has to start. Pick a decent centre midfield. Dubravka in goal. I'd go 4-4-2. I'd just go for it I'd go for it. You know what I mean? Just go for it and try and get the 3 points.
The only thing that it's such a difficult one, because you look at the players that are available now, and I think it does suit a 4-4-2. I think it suits to go with those two centre forwards as well. But we've called for an identity to this team for so long, and they do play in their own way, and they've found a system that works reasonably well, more so than any other system that's been deployed over the 19 months of Steve Bruce. And to then suddenly have to throw that out the window would be a real tough one for me to do. And that's what I'm sort of struggling with at the moment. But I do agree with you, Steve, that getting going back to a more solid 4-4-2 and keeping that pressing game as well might work well. And I would love to see that. I wouldn't mind seeing them go to West Brom and play Andy Carroll with Dwight Gale off them. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. But also I would say that Carroll, whenever he's come in, I think Carroll's been great. But he's never clicked. He never clicked with Wilson when he was playing with him. He's never really clicked with anybody else. He never clicked with Gale last season. It's one of them that I don't know. I just don't know whether he's a starter anymore in the Premier League. I think he had a really good January. He was trusted with a game at Arsenal start. He was excellent there. Probably could have got a goal or two himself. He came on in games, was excellent. Was it Leicester? A couple of other games he scored at Leicester. I think he's got value. I do think he's got value. But I just find it. You can tell probably the way I'm answering this. I'm really struggling to rip up the formation and system that looks as though it's got something. Going back to the earlier suggestion on Joe Linton, if I'm picking this team, I'm not putting Joe Linton in it. That's the top and bottom of it. I'm not putting him in it, but I'm kind of just going with the idea of what Steve Bruce will probably do, and I would suggest that two of the front three, if they keep the system, which I think they will, and two of the front three probably pick themselves. One of them being Joe Linton, and one of them being Ryan Fraser. I think Ryan Fraser will probably more than likely play the 10 role, and I think Joe Linton will probably move out to the left. And like I say, what I said earlier in the podcast, I do believe that it'll be a straight shootout probably for me between Dwight Gale and Jacob Murphy, and I'm thinking that Steve Bruce is more likely to favour Jacob Murphy in that position.
Atsu's getting a lot of mentions, of course. Fraser, Carroll, Atsu, enough to beat the West Brom, Brightons and so on. I mean, do you think Atsu's going to feature?
I think that's Andy, good question, but I think it's quite disrespectful to Brighton in particular. I would argue Brighton have got better players in that position than Andy Carroll and Christian Atsu. And I think
can't score goals, Liam. Can't score goals.
No, they can't. They can't. No, but I think they've got. I would probably swap a couple of theirs for ours in that position at the moment. Brighton are a good side, and I think that's one of the problems that Newcastle have got. They've got that game coming up in 2 weeks' time, and Newcastle United have never done well against Brighton in recent years. They've been literally outplayed every time they've played them in the last 2 seasons. That is a concern that Newcastle United need to go down there and do something different. They've been out-tacticked every time Steve Bruce has played against Graham Potter. He's been totally wiped. They've literally wiped the floor in Newcastle. I remember a home game before lockdown when Brighton came, and I think it was a 0-0. If I remember right, it was a 0-0 game at St James's Park, or maybe in a ones each. Brighton must have had about 15 to 20 chances to Newcastle's 2 or 3. Totally wiped the floor when Newcastle but couldn't score a goal. It's been a problem that they've had for a quite consistent length of time. Do I think they've got more than Newcastle? I think they've got more ability at the moment to get results in Newcastle. And I would argue that it's concerning about West Brom. West Brom seem to have tightened things up and seem to have found a way of getting results, even though looking at players, I would barely take any player from their squad and swap it in for any of ours. But is that the manager? Is Allardyce finally getting enough of a tune? I don't think they'll have enough to stay up, but does it make our game at the weekend really difficult? Yeah, it does. It really does. I think Newcastle's got a real struggle on their hands to get any points without their best players. Take the 3 of the 4 best players of any team in the Premier League, they'll struggle to get results.
Yeah, never write Allardyce off, it has to be said. Martin Bailey asks a question which I did see somebody else ask earlier on, so apologies to that person. But what about Flaherty coming on into the senior squad to play up front? Apparently he's doing really well in the 23, says Martin.
I think he can probably... He's like a wide forward. I do think he's got ability. I've seen him play earlier this season at St James's Park against Fulham. Scored a fantastic goal where he cut in from the right-hand side with his left foot and pinged one in. He's got a lovely left foot on him. Is he ready for senior football? I would argue that he isn't. I think he's a type of player who has to go out on loan somewhere and prove himself before he can come back to Newcastle and show any quality in the first team. Elliot Anderson, on the other hand, I think he's ready. I genuinely, having seen him a few times, I think he's absolutely ready to be involved at Newcastle United. But are we going to get that in Newcastle United? Matty Longstaff's been ready for 18 months to be starting games regularly, and we're still not even seeing him in squads. So do I have any faith that Steve Bruce will treat Elliot Anderson correctly in the next few weeks? No, I don't.
Kenneth Stark says it all depends on Fulham, but we stay up. We are hopeless. Now Bruce has an excuse if we go down. All the injuries, that's what he'll say. It's nailed on. I've got to be honest as well. He'll probably blame the takeover because he'll say that the constant utterings of a takeover meant that the owner didn't put his hand in his pocket. It's an easy excuse. It's a ready-made excuse.
It is a ready-made excuse, but I don't think Ashley would have been minded to really make much of a difference in the January window anyway. I think he thought they had enough. We've seen that before in the past when there's been no takeover on the table. Do I think it's right? Of course I don't. I'm not sticking up for him at all, but I'm not really sure it would have been any different in a different window. I think the financial implications of COVID have probably had the biggest impact on whether the club have been able to spend money. And I think we'll really see the fruits of that in the summer, unfortunately. But like I say, I wouldn't go absolute disaster yet. If Newcastle stay up, I think most teams in their bracket will probably find themselves in the same position. You'll see a lot of loan deals with guaranteed deals at the end of them, sort of passing deals down the line. I think you'll see a lot of that, and I think there'll be a lot of players playing out the final weeks and months of their contracts to get themselves decent moves. I think Newcastle United have got to be at the front of that conversation, front of that queue to get some of the better players available.
You know, you look at the situation with the club teetering on another relegation. I mean, if they go down, what's your gut instinct? You've covered Newcastle with Ashley's tenure throughout Ashley's tenure. Do you think he still wants to get out? I mean, it's like predicting the unpredictable, isn't it? But is the retail industry the most important thing in Mike Ashley's life? And do you think that he would look at renegotiating or look to try and get a new buyer if he drops down into the Championship for the third consecutive time?
It's all going to be about the money, Steve. It's all going to be about, is he going to get what he wants for the football club? And I think while Newcastle United are in the Championship, he isn't going to get what he wants for the football club. So I would anticipate if they do get relegated and he doesn't get the kind of money that he's getting now, which he isn't likely to, then I really don't think. I think we could be stuck with him for a little while longer. Look, it's those kind of questions. You just never know what's around the corner. You never know who buy the club. You never know what Ashley's thinking. But I'm just guessing using history, using what we know. And I think you'll want a fair whack for this football club. You'll not want to knock off the kind of money that it should knock off. I mean, you're talking about Newcastle going from a £320, £330 million valued football club at present in this current deal, dropping down to what? Maybe anybody's estimation, 200 million, if that, 200 million, 180 million is it a football club? Is Mike actually going to accept that kind of money for the club? No, I don't think he is, because I think he wants his money back in terms of the debt, the debt to him, and I think he wants what he paid for it back as well. He was hoping to make a little tidy profit, which this deal would have presented with him, may still present him with. But will he then take a loss on Newcastle United dropping down? I think you'll just open up the checkbook again, and I think you'll bankroll it for a season, hoping they'll get back up. I think only after that season, if Newcastle didn't get up, you may then see a change in approach.
Tougher division to get out of now, though, Liam.
It is. It's not a given, and I've argued this with a few people. You speak to mates and family. It's a hard one, because when we've been relegated the 2 times under Ashley recently as well, I think we've all been guilty of saying we're not coming back up here, and they did. They did. It was tough. You could argue the first time round they had much better players when you go through that squad. Second time round, they had a really, really a top world class manager to get them back up. But this time, have they got any of that? Would it be Graham Jones as the manager? Would Ashley bring somebody else in to get them up? I honestly don't know. There's so many uncertainties. The top and bottom is we just have to stay in this division. Look, there's positives to take from some of this. Fulham suddenly haven't turned into Manchester United or Man City. They're not going to win every game between now and the end of the season. They're picking up a lot more points pro rata than Newcastle United are over the last 12, 15 games. But Newcastle just need the odd win. They need to get the odd win. That's all they need to do. And sometimes when you throw teams together, you have to put players in who aren't expecting a chance in games. Sometimes adversity brings out the best in people, and we've just got to hope that Newcastle United comes out at the weekend, that they can somehow scrape a 1-0 or a 2-1 when they've got all their best players out. And if they do that, then we'll be right in the driving seat. We'll be really positive, because I hope I'm right, but I don't believe that Fulham beat Tottenham. I don't believe that they do on Thursday, and I don't believe they beat Liverpool at the weekend as well. So, yeah, I think if Newcastle can somehow win this, they'll be back in the stay-up driving seat, definitely. Because then you start, then there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You say, oh, there's maybe only 2 games till they get the players back, and then you just go into that run of tough games with a little bit more confidence. I'm not defeatist. I don't believe Newcastle United will definitely go down. I think they'll be very tight, and I think they're going to have to end up getting results in those 2 games at the end of the season I didn't think they were going to have to need, or definitely need, because of the run of 6 that they have, without two of the best, or run of 5, sorry, now that they've got, with arguably, probably 2 of the best players in that team now suddenly disappearing from that for the next few weeks.
Yeah, a lot of people asking about Mike Ashley's helicopter. Did you see it today, Liam? Is it relevant?
I didn't see it. No, I live quite close to the training ground. Actually, I didn't see it turn up here anyway, unless I had my blinkers on today. But I certainly didn't see it. I know there was a lot of people tweeting me and etc. saying that it was in Newcastle. Some people even said it was via a trip to Bournemouth. I don't know. I don't look into these things. There are players use the chopper. That's all I would say. I don't know what the chopper meant and why it's here. But there are players use it to travel up and down to see family when they've had days off and things like that. And Newcastle did have a day off the other day. So it could be something as basic as players coming back for training. It could be more. I honestly couldn't say. I have no idea.
Still beggars belief, days off, you know what I mean, when they're in this current plight. You'd be doing everything you can to stay in the division, wouldn't you? And I've never understood that.
Remember that Steve Bruce likes his day off as well, because he still is obviously based in the Northwest as well. He has his house here, of course, but he's still based in the Northwest. So I don't think we'll see them ending anytime soon.
Lots of people agreeing with me. John Noble says I would play Carroll and Gale against West Brom. I think it's quite easy to pick because we haven't got many forward players left. But I would do it, even if we had the likes of Wilson, etc. I think it's horses for courses, and I think I do think playing Andy Carroll makes sense in this particular occasion. And he's a grafter in the sense that he hasn't got the legs, and he hasn't scored any goals other than the one this season. But when he comes on, far rather let him get us into a winnable position in that game and then go off. You know what I mean? If he can't carry us through,
Yeah, no. Like I say, I think there was a lot of value in having Andy Carroll on the team at the start of the turn of the year. I thought he was really good, and I think he can think himself a little bit unlucky that he isn't getting more game time at the moment. But it's just that they've worked this system, and if there's one player, I don't really think Dwight Gale fits in the system, but if there's one player that absolutely does not fit in the system, it's Andy Carroll. He may argue differently. Be nice to see him get a chance, maybe in a game here and there, to maybe show that, but I think he can still have value between now and the end of the season. I do believe Andy Carroll can cause havoc if we need it, and I do believe he can chip in with the odd goal still. Yeah,
a lot of people saying we shouldn't be mentioning choppers because it's a family show. We'll stop it there. Quick mention of where people can find your work, Liam.
Yeah, so like you said, just down here, it's Liam J. Kennedy, at Liam J. Kennedy 23. So just give us a follow on Twitter. You'll find all my stories there. I work for the Shields Gazette. We work on a subscription system. So if you like the kind of stuff I talk about and do on here, you'll probably like the stuff that I'm writing as well. So check it out. It doesn't cost a lot. I think it's only £1 for a week, or £1 for a couple of weeks. It's quite cheap. It's nothing. It costs you more for a cup of coffee at Costa. So yeah, if you don't mind jumping on and helping out, that'd be really well appreciated. And of course, just keep an eye out for some of the survey results this week to see what your fellow fans have been saying about the situation.
Yeah, looking forward to that. There are other coffee places as well. There's Starbucks. There's Are you getting a blatant plug-in for Costa Coffee, lad? Just want to say as well, obviously didn't play for Newcastle, but thoughts with Ian St John's family. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful bloke he was. Anyone of a certain vintage, and I know a lot of you are out there who watch our show, will remember the Saint and Greavesy show. I grew up watching those guys, and they were absolutely fantastic. And along with the likes of Jimmy Hill, people who made football special. Before the game and after the game, and just fantastic. But sorry to hear about his passing. Him and Greavesy, fantastic guys. But sorry to hear about Ian St John. Liam, as always, that hour passes far too quickly, mate. But you have a good week, and look forward to seeing you next week, mate.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers,
Take care, pal. Bye.
week's attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look